Revelation 2570. From the 2nd of December 1942. Power supply and willpower. The walk through earthly life requires a lot of willpower, yet people will never lack it as long as they make contact with God, that is, ask Him for grace and strength. Every person receives the strength of life, which at the same time means that he can now carry out what His will drives him to do. No human being is deprived of vitality as long as he is still on earth. It is able to accomplish much that the human being wants, and this often makes him inclined to believe that he can master everything, that he must succeed in everything he sets his mind to. Yet he has to request this increased willpower from God, and he will never make a wrong request, for God sets no limits to the human being's abilities as soon as the human being unites with God and thus makes use of God's strength. Without God's support, the strength is limited, and it will only suffice for an earthly life without special requirements. Earthly life with God corresponds to divine will, for God's strength can now be revealed to a person who requests this strength and thus allows God Himself to work through him. This person can let his will become active and nothing will be impossible for him. However, as soon as the human being is not yet united with God, his earthly life will be far more difficult, for then he will only be able to accomplish those things which God in His wisdom allows him to accomplish. That is, the human being's influx of vitality is wisely allocated by God according to his degree of maturity and his earthly task. He can increase it himself through heartfelt prayer, but he has to make do with it if he does not take recourse to prayer, for he should establish contact with God through lack of strength and request strength. Again, people who are far from God can also have extraordinary strength at their disposal. This, too, is rooted in God's wisdom, how He determines each person's destiny, how it can best lead to maturity of soul. Extraordinary vitality gives the human being ample opportunity to be lovingly active, which increases the strength even more, but as soon as the human being is outside of love and nevertheless has great strength at his disposal, it will come to him from the God-opposing power. For he will be supported by evil forces which thereby try to win him over for themselves. And since the will of these people themselves decides in favor of evil, God does not prevent the supply of strength from below. It is always the human being's own will which determines how he receives strength, for he can increase it at any time through his prayer. God constantly sends His flow of strength to earth, which can now be received by anyone who opens himself, that is, who enters into contact with the giver of strength. This supply of strength at every person's disposal need only be used in order to cover earthly life easily and effortlessly, for he will now be able to accomplish whatever his will decides, because the strength from God achieves everything. Amen.